Hello, my name is Mazam Ashfaq and I'm going to give you a quick introduction of matrices today. So what is matrices? Matrices is actually a method of solving simultaneous linear equations first used by Arthur Cayley, who was a mathematician. And what is this matrices? Let's know about it. Matrices is nothing new. It is just numbers, real or complex, arranged in the form of horizontal lines and vertical lines. These horizontal and vertical lines arrayed data is known as matrices. Matrix. So these horizontal lines are called rows and these vertical lines are called columns. So when you want to know, when you want to count how many columns are there in the matrices, you just have to count from left to right how many lines are there, like 1, 2, 3. So there are 3 columns. And if you want to know how many rows are there, you just have to count from top to bottom how many lines are there. So if there are 3 lines, there are 3 rows. If there are 2, then there are 2 rows. So next topic, the most important topic, and which is important for examination purpose also, that is order of matrices. Whenever you want to know order of matrices, order is nothing, just a type or size of matrices. How do we get to know the type or size of the matrices? Just by looking at it. And what is the deciding factor for this order of matrices are? The deciding factors are rows and columns. So these rows and columns can be counted, and then we'll say this is the order of the matrices. How? So suppose a matrix which has 2 columns and 2 rows, then the order of the matrices is actually 2 into 2. How did we write it? We write it in the form of number of rows into number of columns. Just write number of rows into number of columns, and you don't have to multiply it. So suppose if the number of rows is 3 and the number of columns is 2, you don't have to multiply it, write it 6. You just write 3 into 2. So this 3 into 2 is the order of the matrices. Okay, so what is the next topic? So next we discuss about types of matrices. There are many types of matrices. Deciding factor again rows and columns only. So first one is square matrix. How we know that what is a square matrix? What kind of triangular matrix is also there? So just look, if the number of rows is equal to the number of columns, then that matrix is called a square matrix, and then that matrix is known as a square matrix. So suppose if you have a matrix, say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 elements are there. What are these elements? Elements are the numbers written inside the matrix. And how many rows are there? There are 2 rows. How many columns are there? There are 2 columns. Then it is a square matrix of order 2. Why order 2? Because number of rows is equal to the number of columns. So there are 2 matrices. Then again, whenever the number of rows is equal to the number of columns, then that matrix will become a square matrix. Next, move on. The second type of matrix. The second type of matrix is rectangular matrix. What is this rectangular matrix? Rectangular matrix in just opposite to a square matrix. In a square matrix, we saw that number of rows is equal to number of columns. But in rectangular matrix, number of rows will not be equal to the number of columns. Whenever they are unequal, that matrix will become rectangular. Whether 3 into 2, whether 4 into 3, whether 4 into 5, 7 into 6, any. Whenever the number of rows are not equals to number of column, then it will be called rectangular matrix. Then let's talk about next topic. Next topic is row matrix. What is row matrix? Row matrix is simple by its name. It is very clear that it consists of only one row. Only one row. Number of rows is 1. So whenever any matrix contains only one row, that matrix will be known as row matrix. Other column matrix. Similarly, like row matrix, it also has only one column. So whenever any matrix has only one column, that matrix will be known as column matrix. Okay. The next one is null or zero. Null or zero. If all of the elements are zero, then that matrix is known as null or zero matrix, and it is denoted by O. Of any order, of any rows, number of columns, any. If all the elements are zero, then that matrix will become null matrix. The next one is principal diagonal. What is principal diagonal? By diagonal, we know that if we have a square and if we join the opposite vertices, we get a diagonal. So similarly, in any matrix, the first element of the first row and the last element of the last row, all the numbers, when you will join it diagonally, if all the elements written in that diagonal is known as, then that matrix will be principal diagonal matrix. The next one is diagonal matrix. What is the difference between principal diagonal and diagonal? So principal diagonal and diagonal, diagonal matrix has these elements written inside the matrices. Other than diagonal, all the elements are zero. If all the elements written other than diagonal are zero, then that matrix is known as diagonal matrix. Okay. So next one is triangular matrix. So in triangular matrix, all the elements written under the principal diagonal. We have discussed about the principal diagonal. Principal diagonal is actually the first element of the first row and the last element of the last row. So below that, if below that all the elements are zero, then that matrix is a triangular matrix. And triangular matrix have two kinds. If the below all the elements are zero, then that is upper triangular. Why? Because on the upper side of the principal diagonal, there are non-zero elements. And the second one is lower triangular. Opposite to that, what is it? That all the non-zero elements will be under the principal diagonal. That is lower triangular matrices. The next one is identity matrix, an important one. In identity matrix, all the principal diagonal elements, as we know principal diagonal, the first element of the first row and the last element of the last row. Other than that, all the elements are zero, but the principal diagonal elements should be 1. So if the principal diagonal elements are 1, 1, 1 each, and all the elements are 0, other than 1, you can see 0 everywhere. Upper to that, and lower to that, then that matrices is known as identity matrix, and this identity matrix is denoted by I. Okay, so this was all about matrices and types of matrices. Okay, thank you so much. Bye bye.